I still remember the smell, not just smoke, but everything I owned, everything I loved turning into ash and memory. The acrid stench of burned wood, melted plastic, and dreams going up in flames. It was a Tuesday. Isn't it strange how tragedy doesn't wait for a significant day? It just barges in on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon while you're at the grocery store, debating between regular or organic milk. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mrs. Patterson, this is Fire Chief Morrison. There's been an incident at your property on Maple Grove Drive. The words didn't land at first. They just floated there, like they belonged to someone else's life. An incident. My property. Those clinical words that meant my entire world was currently being devoured by flames. I don't remember the drive home. I don't remember dropping my grocery bags in the parking lot or running 3 red lights. What I do remember is turning onto my street and seeing the black smoke billowing into the perfect blue sky, a dark, ugly scar across the afternoon. Fire trucks, neighbors gathered on the sidewalk with their phones out, and my house, my beautiful colonial home with the blue shutters I'd painted myself, wrapped in flames like some kind of nightmare birthday cake. But none of that was the worst part. The worst part was seeing David, my husband of 12 years, standing on the front lawn with his hands in his pockets, watching our house burn like he was at a barbecue, waiting for the steaks to be done. And he was smiling. Not a small smile. Not a nervous, uncomfortable, I don't know how to process this trauma smile. A genuine, satisfied, almost peaceful smile. I ran to him. David, oh my God, are you okay? What happened? He turned to me, and that smile didn't even flicker. Hey, honey. Yeah, I'm fine. Electrical fire, they think. Started in the basement. But everything we have is in there. He shrugged. Actually shrugged. We've got insurance. It'll be okay. I stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Our wedding album was in there. My grandmother's jewelry. The nursery we'd spent months decorating for the baby we'd lost 3 years ago. Still untouched because I couldn't bear to change it. Our entire life. And he was okay with it. David, what's wrong with you? My voice cracked. Why are you smiling? The smile finally faded, but only slightly. He pulled me into a hug that felt wrong, too loose, too casual, like he was comforting me about a canceled dinner reservation, not the destruction of our entire life. I'm just relieved we're both safe, he said. But his voice didn't match his words. There was something else there, something I couldn't quite identify. As I stood there in his arms, watching the firefighters battle the blaze that was consuming everything I'd built, a cold realization settled over me. I lost my home that day, but I didn't know I was about to lose my marriage too. The fire burned for 3 hours. 3 hours of watching my life reduced to rubble and smoke. And through all of it, David stood beside me with that same inexplicable calm. It's going to be okay, sweetheart, he kept saying. Each time, the words sounded more rehearsed, like lines from a play he'd practiced in front of a mirror. We'll rebuild. We'll start fresh. Sometimes these things happen for a reason. These things happen for a reason. What reason could there possibly be for our home burning down? I was hysterical, sobbing. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, brought me a bottle of water and a blanket. David just stood there, one hand rubbing my back in mechanical circles, his eyes fixed on the smoldering remains of our house, with an expression I'd never seen before. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't shock. It was something closer to satisfaction. Mr. Patterson? A fire investigator approached us, clipboard in hand. Young guy, maybe 30, with serious eyes. I need to ask you a few questions about the fire. Of course, of course. David's voice was almost eager. Too eager. I was in the basement around 1 p.m. doing some work on the circuit breaker. I noticed some sparking near the old wiring by the water heater. I tried to fix it myself, but... He shook his head ruefully. I should have called an electrician. This is all my fault. I stared at him. David had never touched the circuit breaker in his life. He didn't even know where the water heater was. Last month, I'd had to show him where we kept the spare light bulbs. The investigator was scribbling notes. So you were in the basement when the fire started? Well, no. I left around 1:15, went to grab lunch at Mike's Diner on 5th Street, got back around 2:30 and saw the smoke. The details rolled off his tongue so smoothly. Times, places, a perfect timeline. Too perfect. And your wife was grocery shopping like every Tuesday? David glanced at me, giving my shoulder a squeeze. She always does the shopping on Tuesdays. He was right. I did. But the way he said it, like he'd planned around it, made my skin crawl. The investigator nodded, asked a few more questions, then moved away to confer with his colleagues. I watched them huddle together near one of the fire trucks, their voices low. One of them kept glancing back at David, not at me, at David. Their expressions were suspicious. David, I whispered, what were you really doing in the basement? You never go down there. I told you I was checking the breaker. You don't even know what a circuit breaker looks like. His jaw tightened. For just a second, I saw something flash across his face. Annoyance? Anger? But then that smile returned, softer this time, patronizing. Honey, you're in shock. You're not thinking clearly. He kissed my forehead. Let's not worry about the details right now. The important thing is we're both safe, and we have excellent insurance coverage. Did you know our policy covers full replacement value? Plus temporary housing. We might even come out ahead on this. Come out ahead. Who talks about coming out ahead when their house just burned down? I pulled away from him slightly, studying his face like I was seeing it for the first time. The man I'd married, the man I'd built a life with, suddenly felt like a stranger wearing my husband's face. And that smile, that horrible, inappropriate smile, was still there, lurking at the corners of his mouth, waiting. The insurance company put us up in the Riverside Inn, a decent extended-stay motel on the edge of town. 2 rooms, a kitchenette, and a view of the parking lot. It should have felt temporary, depressing even, a constant reminder of what we'd lost. But David treated it like a vacation. Look at this, babe. He came through the door 3 days after the fire, carrying shopping bags from Best Buy and Target. New laptop, new tablet, and check this out. He pulled out a top-of-the-line espresso machine. We always talked about getting one of these. I stared at the pile of boxes accumulating on the motel bed. David, we just lost everything. Maybe we should be more careful with money right now. Careful? Honey, the insurance is covering everything. Why not upgrade while we have the chance? That smile again, wide, enthusiastic, completely disconnected from reality. Think of it as a fresh start. Out with the old, in with the new. Out with the old. Our wedding china, my mother's quilts, the rocking chair where I'd planned to nurse our baby. All just old things to him. Have you heard anything from the fire investigator? I asked, watching him set up his new laptop. Oh, they're still doing their thing. Routine stuff. Nothing to worry about. He didn't even look up from the screen. It's been 3 days. Don't they usually... Sarah, please. His voice had an edge now. Can we have one evening without you spiraling? I'm trying to stay positive here, and you're dragging us both down with all this negativity. Negativity? Our house burned down, and I was being negative. I swallowed the response building in my throat and went to take a shower, suddenly desperate to be away from him. That night, while David snored in the bed next to mine, I couldn't sleep. The numbers weren't adding up. All these purchases, the gadgets, the new clothes, the expensive dinners he insisted on, where was the money coming from? Our checking account had maybe $3,000 before the fire. I'd checked it obsessively, worried about temporary housing costs. But David kept swiping his card like we'd won the lottery. I slid out of bed and quietly pulled his wallet from his jeans pocket. Inside, tucked behind his credit cards, I found a receipt. Riverside Storage, Unit 247, paid through March. My heart started pounding. We didn't have a storage unit. We'd never needed one. I pulled out my phone and Googled the address. Riverside Storage was on the opposite side of town. The payment date on the receipt? February 10th, 2 weeks before the fire. My hands started shaking. Why would David rent a storage unit 2 weeks before our house burned down? What had he put in there? I carefully replaced the receipt and crawled back into bed, my mind racing. In the darkness, I could hear David's steady breathing, so peaceful, so content. And suddenly, everything clicked into a horrible, terrifying picture. The too perfect timeline. The detailed story about the circuit breaker. His insistence on being alone in the house that day. The way he'd known exactly where I'd be and when. Sometimes these things happen for a reason, he'd said. But things don't just happen. People make them happen. David, I whispered into the darkness, though he couldn't hear me. What did you do? The only answer was his contented snoring and the sound of my heart breaking with the weight of a truth I wasn't ready to face. The call came on a Thursday morning. I was folding laundry in the motel room when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Mrs. Patterson, this is Detective Rachel Martinez with the Fire Investigation Unit. I was wondering if you'd be available to come down to the station this afternoon. Alone. That last word hung in the air like a warning. Alone? Why alone? We'd just like to ask you some questions separately, standard procedure in cases like these. Her voice was professional, but not unkind. Cases like these. What did that mean? David was out, another unexplained errand, another shopping trip. I agreed to meet her at 2. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and fear. Detective Martinez led me to a small interview room with gray walls and a table that had seen better days. She sat across from me, a thick manila folder between us. Mrs. Patterson, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. She leaned forward. Did you know your husband increased the insurance coverage on your home 3 months ago? My stomach dropped. What? He upgraded your policy from $250,000 to $750,000. Full replacement value, plus an additional rider for personal property. The premium jumped significantly. I shook my head slowly. No, I didn't know. David handles all the... He said he handles all that stuff. Did you sign anything? Any documents? I don't remember. Maybe? He has me sign things sometimes. Tax forms, insurance stuff. I trusted him. The words sounded pathetic even as I said them. Detective Martinez slid a paper across the table. This is the application. That's your signature at the bottom. I stared at my own handwriting. I vaguely remembered David asking me to sign something while I was cooking dinner. Just routine renewal, he'd said. I'd signed it without reading. Mrs. Patterson, we've also discovered that your husband rented a storage unit 2 weeks before the fire. Do you know what he might have stored there? So I wasn't crazy. The receipt was real. I don't know. I only found out about it a few days ago. The detective nodded, making notes. One more thing. Your husband told our investigators he was in the basement working on the electrical system the day of the fire. But according to your neighbor, Mrs. Chen, she saw him leaving your house at 12:45 p.m., carrying 2 large duffel bags. She thought he was going to the gym. David didn't go to the gym. Ever. He also made several calls from a burner phone we found in the debris, calls to a man with a history of insurance fraud. She paused. Mrs. Patterson, I need you to understand something. Right now, you're not a suspect. But if we find evidence that you were involved in any way... Involved? My voice cracked. I lost everything in that fire. I believe you, but your signature is on those insurance documents. Legally, that makes you a party to this claim. If your husband committed fraud... She didn't need to finish. I understood. He'd made me complicit without my knowledge. Every signature I'd carelessly scrawled while making dinner or watching TV had tied me to whatever scheme he'd planned. I drove back to the motel in a daze. When I walked in, David was there, lounging on the bed with his new laptop, scrolling through what looked like real estate listings. Hey, babe, I was thinking we should look at houses in Riverside Hills. Much nicer neighborhood. We can finally afford it now. Now. Because our house burned down. because he burned it down. David, we need to talk about the insurance. His fingers froze on the keyboard. Just for a second. Then that smile returned, but it didn't reach his eyes this time. What about it? Why did you increase our coverage without telling me? I didn't. I did tell you. You just don't remember. You're so stressed lately. Stop lying to me! The words exploded out of me. The detective told me everything: the storage unit, the increased insurance, the burner phone. His face changed. The smile vanished completely, replaced by something cold and hard. This was a David I'd never seen before. You talked to the police? Without me? His voice was dangerously quiet. They wanted to talk to me alone. And you just went? Without consulting your husband? Without a lawyer? He stood up, and suddenly the small motel room felt even smaller. Do you have any idea what you've done? They're trying to pin this on us, Sarah, and you just walked in there and... On us? Or on you? The question hung between us like a blade. This is what they do, he said, his voice turning pleading, manipulative. They turn couples against each other. They make the wife doubt the husband. Can't you see what they're doing? But I could see what he was doing. The gaslighting, the manipulation, the way he was trying to make me question my own sanity, my own judgment. Did you burn down our house, David? How can you even ask me that? But he wouldn't meet my eyes. Answer the question. You're being paranoid. Did you burn down our house? Silence, long and damning. And in that silence, I found my answer. David left after our fight. Slammed the motel door so hard the pictures rattled on the walls. Said he needed to clear his head and would be back later. I sat on the bed, surrounded by his new purchases, feeling like I was drowning. The knock on the door came 20 minutes later. I assumed it was David. Having forgotten his key, it wasn't. Mrs. Sarah Patterson? The woman at the door was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, wearing a gray suit that meant business. She carried a leather briefcase that looked expensive. My name is Jennifer Caldwell. I'm an attorney with Morrison and Associates. May I come in? Every instinct screamed at me to say no, to call David, to ask what this was about. But a deeper instinct, the one that had been whispering warnings for days, told me to let her in. She sat in the chair by the window, placing her briefcase on the small table. Mrs. Patterson, I represent the insurance company investigating your fire claim. I'm here because I believe you need to understand your legal position. My legal position? Ms. Caldwell opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. 3 weeks ago, your husband came to our offices. He requested a meeting to discuss what he called estate planning. He brought papers for you to sign. She slid the first document across to me. It was a quitclaim deed, dated February 5th, my signature at the bottom. This document transferred your ownership interest in the marital home solely to your husband. You signed away your rights to the property. The room tilted. What? No, I never... But there was my signature. Again. There's more. Another document. This is a revision to your joint bank accounts, converting them to accounts under his name only, with you listed merely as an authorized user, not a co-owner. Another paper. This is a liability waiver, stating that you acknowledge any debts incurred on the property are his sole responsibility. Document after document, all dated in the weeks before the fire, all with my signature. He had me sign all of these? Over the course of several weeks, yes, usually one at a time, mixed in with legitimate documents, I imagine. Tax forms, medical releases, a signature here, a signature there. Her voice was clinical but not cruel. Mrs. Patterson, your husband systematically removed your legal ownership of everything in your marriage. The house, the accounts, even your car. He transferred the title 2 weeks ago. I couldn't breathe. Why? Why would he do this? Miss Caldwell's expression softened slightly. Because the insurance company has flagged your claim as potential fraud. When, not if, but when, charges are filed, all assets connected to the fraud will be seized. But he made sure those assets are only in his name. You own nothing, Mrs. Patterson. If this goes to court, you'll have no claim to the insurance money, no claim to anything. But I'll also have no— I couldn't finish the sentence. No liability. Legally, you're not responsible for debts you don't own. He's trying to protect you from prosecution while keeping all the money for himself. She paused. Or more likely, he's setting you up to take the fall while he walks away clean. The papers blurred in front of me. All those casual signatures. Just sign here, babe. Routine paperwork, honey. Every single one a trap. There's something else you need to know. Miss Caldwell's voice dropped lower. Our investigators found evidence that your husband has been planning this for at least 6 months. The storage unit where he moved valuables before the fire? It's registered under a shell company. He's been siphoning money from your accounts, taking out credit cards in your name, building up debt that would all disappear with the insurance payout. Ma'am, she said, and for the first time, I heard something like pity in her voice. Your husband knew this fire was coming, because he planned it, and he planned for you to either go down with him or be left with nothing. The documents scattered from my shaking hands onto the motel carpet. What do? I whispered. Jennifer Caldwell leaned forward, her expression fierce. You fight back, you protect yourself, and you make sure he doesn't get away with this. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. Mrs. Patterson, the man you married 12 years ago, he's gone. Maybe he was never real at all. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can save yourself. The door closed behind her with a soft click. I sat alone in that motel room, surrounded by David's new gadgets and my old signatures, and finally let myself cry for the life I'd lost and the man who'd never really existed. I heard his key in the lock 2 hours later. I'd spent that time arranging the documents on the bed in neat rows, evidence of my own blindness, proof of his betrayal. David walked in whistling. Actually whistling. Then he saw the papers. The whistling died. His face went pale. And for the first time since the fire, that smile completely vanished. Sarah, what is all this? Sit down, David. Something in my voice made him obey. He sank into the chair, his eyes darting across the documents, calculating, already planning his defense. The lawyer came today, Jennifer Caldwell. She explained everything. My voice was eerily calm. The quitclaim deed, the account transfers, the shell company, all of it. Sarah, listen. No, you listen. I picked up the first document. February 5th. You had me sign away the house while I was making dinner. I remember now. You said it was for tax purposes. It was for tax. February 12th. The bank accounts. You told me it was to simplify our finances. Baby. February 18th. The liability waiver. You said it was for the home equity loan we never actually got. My hands were shaking, but my voice stayed steady. You spent months planning this, moving our valuables to storage, increasing the insurance, transferring everything into your name only, and then you burned down our house. That's insane! You sound paranoid! Stop it! The words cracked like a whip. Stop gaslighting me! Stop manipulating me! Stop lying! David's face hardened. The mask finally dropped completely. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. The debt. The business loans that went bad. I did this for us. For us? You did this for us? I laughed, a bitter sound I didn't recognize. You put my name on fraudulent insurance documents while removing my name from everything we own. How is that for us? I was protecting you. If anything went wrong, you'd be clean. You could claim ignorance. Because I was ignorant. You made sure of that. I stood up, and he flinched. Actually flinched. Did you even think about what this would do to me, watching our home burn? Watching you smile while everything I loved turned to ash? Do you have any idea what that did to me? It was just stuff, Sarah. Things. We could buy new things with the insurance money. My grandmother's ring was in there, our wedding album, the nursery we built for Emma. At our dead daughter's name, something flickered across his face. Guilt, regret, but it was gone in an instant. We would have had enough money to try again. IVF, adoption, whatever you wanted. I did this so we could have a better life. You did this because you're a coward. The words ripped out of me. You got into debt, you made bad choices, and instead of facing the consequences like an adult, you burned down our life and tried to make me your accomplice. David stood up slowly. His expression turned cold, calculating. You can't prove any of this. It's all speculation. My word against some insurance investigator's theory. Your word? I almost laughed. David, they found the burner phone. They know about the storage unit. They have your calls to that fraud specialist. And I just spent 2 hours with a lawyer who showed me exactly how you've been setting this up for months. His jaw clenched. So what? You gonna run to the cops? Turn in your own husband? I already talked to the detective days ago. His face went from red to white. You did what? I talked to Detective Martinez, told her everything I knew. And you know what she told me? I stepped closer to him. That right now, I'm not a suspect. But you are. And every day you let me stay in the dark. Every day you let me sign something without reading it. You were building a case against yourself. This is... He ran his hands through his hair, pacing. This is unbelievable. My own wife. You're supposed to stand by me. Stand by you? While you commit fraud? While you destroy our life? While you try to make me your patsy? I shook my head. I don't even know who you are. I'm your husband. No. The word came out quiet but firm. You're not. My husband died the day our house burned down. I just didn't know it yet. David stared at me, and I saw a dozen emotions cross his face. Anger, fear, desperation, and finally, something like hatred. You'll regret this, he said quietly, when they freeze the insurance money, when we lose everything, when you're living in some shitty apartment working 3 jobs. You'll wish you'd kept your mouth shut. Maybe, I said, but at least I'll be able to sleep at night. He grabbed his jacket and keys. At the door, he turned back one last time. I loved you, Sarah. Everything I did because I loved you. No, David. Everything you did because you loved yourself. I was just collateral damage. The door slammed behind him. I heard his car start, the tires squeal as he peeled out of the parking lot. And I stood there in that cheap motel room, surrounded by the evidence of his betrayal, and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. The man I'd married was gone, but maybe he'd never really been there at all. The next morning, I called Detective Martinez. I need to tell you everything, I said, and I need protection. We met at a coffee shop far from the motel, far from anywhere David might look for me. Jennifer Caldwell, the lawyer, was there too. They'd apparently been coordinating, building a case, waiting for me to be ready. Mrs. Patterson, Detective Martinez began, sliding a thick file across the table. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Your husband is in serious trouble. She opened the file. Bank statements, credit card applications, phone records, storage unit receipts, photos of items he'd moved before the fire, expensive electronics, jewelry, family heirlooms, things that should have burned but didn't. David Patterson has been planning insurance fraud for approximately 8 months. He started by taking out multiple credit cards in both your names, maxing them out. Then he secured a second mortgage on your home without your knowledge. Without my knowledge? How is that possible? Jennifer Caldwell spoke up. He forged your signature on the documents. We've had it verified by a handwriting expert. It's close, but not perfect. He got sloppy. Detective Martinez continued. The debt was crushing him. Over $300,000 between credit cards, the second mortgage, and business loans from a failed investment venture you probably didn't know about. I shook my head numbly. I didn't. The fire was meant to solve everything. The insurance payout would be $750,000, enough to pay off the debts, with plenty left over. But he needed you to be innocent. So he spent months transferring assets, removing your name from ownership, while keeping your signature on just enough documents to make the claim look legitimate. He was going to let me take the fall, I whispered. Possibly. Or use you as an alibi. Either way, He made sure he could walk away clean while you held the bag. The detective's voice softened. But here's the thing, Mrs. Patterson. You're not responsible for crimes you didn't know were being committed. Every signature he forged, every document he tricked you into signing without proper disclosure, and that's on him, not you. What happens now? Now we arrest him, charge him with arson, insurance fraud, forgery, and about a dozen other crimes. The insurance company will deny the claim. The house is a total loss. And the debt, she paused, the debt is still there. My heart sank. So I'm left with nothing? Jennifer Caldwell leaned forward. Not nothing. You're left with your freedom, your clean record, your future, and legally, because he removed your name from the accounts and property, you're not liable for most of his debts. He tried to protect himself, but he accidentally protected you instead. What about him? What will happen to David? He's looking at 10 to 20 years if convicted. And Mrs. Patterson? Detective Martinez caught my eye. He will be convicted. The evidence is overwhelming. The burner phone records show he contacted a known arsonist 3 times in the week before the fire. We found accelerant residue on clothing in his storage unit. He made mistakes. Lots of them. I should have felt satisfaction. Victory. But all I felt was exhausted. There's one more thing, the detective said gently. We need you to testify, to tell the court about the signatures, the manipulation, everything. I know that's hard. I'll do it. The words came easily. I'll tell them everything. Because the truth was simple. I'd spent 12 years married to a lie, and I was done protecting it. Over the next 3 weeks, everything happened fast. David was arrested at the motel. I watched from across the parking lot as they put him in handcuffs, read him his rights. He saw me standing there and his face contorted with rage, screaming something I couldn't hear. The insurance company formally denied the claim. The house, what was left of it, went into foreclosure. The creditors came calling, but Jennifer Caldwell fought them off, proving my lack of legal responsibility. My parents offered to let me stay with them. I said no. I needed to do this on my own. I found a tiny studio apartment on the other side of town. 1 room, a bathroom, a kitchenette barely big enough for a microwave. But it was mine. My name on the lease. My choice. I got a job at a bookstore, minimum wage, but the owner was kind and didn't ask too many questions about why a 38-year-old woman was starting over from scratch. And slowly, day by day, I started to rebuild. Not the life I'd had. That life was gone, burned away in more ways than one, but a new life, a real one, built on truth instead of lies. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for June. I would testify. I would tell my story. And I would watch as the man I'd married faced the consequences of his choices. But that was tomorrow's problem. Today, I was free. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I sat in the witness box for 6 hours over 2 days, telling the jury everything. The signatures I'd made without reading, the documents hidden in dinner conversations, the smile on his face as our house burned. David's lawyer tried to make me look complicit, tried to suggest I'd known all along. But the evidence was overwhelming. The forged signatures, the burner phone, the accelerant-soaked rags in his storage unit. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: arson in the first degree, insurance fraud, forgery, identity theft. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in prison. David didn't look at me as they led him away. Maybe that was a mercy. I walked out of that courthouse into bright July sunshine and felt like I could breathe for the first time in months. The aftermath was messy. It always is. The house sold for pennies on the dollar, the land more valuable than the burned-out structure on it. The creditors got their money from David's seized assets, the storage unit full of our belongings, the new laptop and gadgets, even his car. I got therapy, a lot of therapy. My counselor, Dr. Reeves, helped me understand that I wasn't stupid for trusting my husband. That manipulation is insidious precisely because it's invisible. You didn't fail, she told me during one session. He did. He failed at being honest, at being a partner, at being human. That's not on you. It took me a long time to believe her. My studio apartment became home. I painted the walls a soft blue, got a used couch from a thrift store, adopted a cat from the shelter, an orange tabby I named Phoenix because the symbolism was too perfect to resist. The bookstore promoted me to assistant manager. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. The smell of paper and ink, the quiet conversations with customers, the simple pleasure of recommending a good story to someone who needed it. I started taking community college classes, business management, not because I wanted to be a CEO, but because I wanted to understand finances, contracts, all the things I'd blindly trusted David to handle. I would never be that vulnerable again. Some days were harder than others. I'd see a couple laughing together at a cafe and feel a stab of loss. Not for David. I didn't miss him. But for the idea of partnership, of trust, of building a life with someone. Dr. Reeves said that was normal. You didn't just lose a husband,